Welcome to the Getting Started with OnCue video series. Today we're going to go over testing your research within OnCue, and we're going to cover 4 different scenarios. There's going to be a quick test of the end research tool that is allowed within OnCue. The second scenario we're going to cover is how to test the opt-in dialog and the research, and then test with other sample configurations and traits set up, and then finally test against the live site. There are 5 categories of research configurations you want to consider when testing your research. The first is the disruption limits. That's the overall governor that is placed on OnCue, and it sets the limits of how much research can be exposed to a single site visitor during their current browsing session. By default, this is set to 1. The execution limits, these are, for the purposes of this video, considered the cookies that get set when research tool is executed, when an opt-in dialog is either accepted or dismissed. So that's how we'll treat execution limits. Selection rates are the essentially rates at which you want to execute the research. If you want 1 in 100 visitors to a certain page to get the research, then it will be 1 in 100 selection rate. Sampling traits covers a lot of different areas, from geolocation to pages visited, time on site. There's a full list of those in the documentation, but for what our purposes are, we're going to essentially test the opt-in dialog sample trait and then discuss how to test the other sample traits, and we'll demonstrate using IP blocking in one of the scenarios. And finally, there are target pages. So when you set up your research, you set up the areas within your website you wish to conduct research, and the only way to truly test the target pages is against the live website. So what we're going to do first is look at how we can do just a real quick test that essentially bypasses all of those configurations. So within your research project, and for the purposes of this video, we're going to use the weather survey project that we have set up that is actually set up for a 1 in 2 rate, and then gets suppressed for 30 days. It's tied to the About page on OnCueResearch.com, and it has sampling traits for opt-in dialog and IP blocking on the USC IP, so that the employees don't get to take the research. You'll notice that in your research project there's a testing tab. When you come over here, you'll see there are a couple of different links that are provided, and a link to additional testing resources. These URLs have the OnCue.testing parameter set up, and they have a value, so in this case 16 or 1. These are tied to specific configurations that we just talked about. So for instance, a flag of 2 would have turn on the disruption limits, 4 execution limits, 8 selection rates are enforced, 16 sampling, 24 selection rates and sampling, and 30 would turn on all of the rates. The flag of 1 essentially bypasses everything. So what we're going to do is we're going to click on testing equal 1, and this is the only place that you can essentially test your research within the OnCue application itself. Most other testing will need to be done in a clean browser where you can clear the cookies that get executed when you execute research. That's the only way to really test in a good manner. So in this case, we have the weather survey getting displayed within the research, and as you'll notice, it came up without an opt-in dialog, even though that's set. Opt-in rates were ignored, or execution rates were ignored, selection rates, all of those things were ignored, and we went straight to the research tool. This is a way for you to test lightbox, redirections, things like that. This is also where you could copy that URL and send it to somebody if you just wanted them to see the end result. Now we're going to take a step back and look at how to test the research with more of the configurations. So for that, I'll close out of the testing page, and I'll want to copy the URL here, and I'll open up a browser, and I'll make sure that I clear out all of those cookies that might be in the actual browser, and I'll come in and I'll paste that in. 16 is where we're turning on sample rates, but I want to make one big change here because I can't really test this if I'm having other sample rates that would make it fail. For instance, if my IP is within that IP blocking, the IP block for the USC website. So I'm going to come back over and I'm going to actually disable some of these other blocks so I can test the opt-in dialog. I'm going to make sure that USC IP block is turned off. And I want to go back to my test, hit enter, and then I'm going to be able to see my testing opt-in dialog with the rates being ignored, everything being ignored except for the sample. So this way I can test really quickly the look and feel of the dialog. If I could continue, it's going to show me again that research. So in this scenario, since we're only dealing with the sampling traits being turned on, all the other things like execution rates or selection rates and cookies and things like that are being ignored. So if I hit refresh, what's going to happen is it's going to bypass the opt-in dialog because I've already executed that as part of the sample trait, and it's going to go straight back to my research. So the only way to actually test this again would be to, close my browser and clear out the cookies. So I'm going to do that and start. So I've cleared the cookies, I've started a new browsing session, I paste it back in, and again I get my opt-in dialog and I can go through the process. But let's say I want to instead test with all the different rules. So I would change this to 30 on the actual URL, and now I'm going to clear out all the cookies. So let's just actually go through this process. You'll see app.oncueresearch.com. You want to remove those cookies, and we want to close the browser. Start it up again, and now we're going to start with testing equal 30. So I'm testing with everything turned on. So in this case, it's going to do the opt-in dialog. I'm going to hit continue. It's executed the research. But now if I try to refresh the page, it's going to ignore it because now the cookies are being set and everything's being detected as it would be on the live site except for target pages. Again, the only way to test your target pages is by doing so within the context of your actual live site. So we're going to do that. We're going to go over to OnCueResearch.com, and we're going to go to the About page, and our research is already in testing mode, so it won't come up when I run the research on the live page. But if I now add OnCue.testing equals 30, I'm going to test it with all of the features turned on, all the configurations, and it's going to execute, and it's going to show up and show me the opt-in dialog. And again, if I now click continue, I'm going to see my weather survey as I would if I hit the refresh again. Nothing's going to happen. So the main difference between this test and the test that was on the OnCue, the app.oncueresearch testing page, is that I'm testing with my target page's rules. So this would only execute on the About page. If I go to anywhere else within OnCue and I hit test, it's not going to work. So I may have other research in test mode and other things executed, so I don't really want to do that. But trust me, if you're on your website, you test on a target page, you go to a non-target page, you do the test, that research will not execute. So let's cover the final scenario in which we actually turn on that extra sampling rate because we want to be able to test it. Again, I'm going to clear out the browser cookies and restart. But what I'm going to do is come back over to sampling. I'm going to turn on that USC IP block, and I've set it up for my current IP as part of that block. So now when I go back to the clean browser and I test with the OnCue testing flag equal 30, what I'll see is actually nothing, because I'm part of that IP block that's not going to get the research. So if you're going to be testing with sample traits such as geolocation and things like that, you're going to have to be able to test either using a proxy server where you can emulate being from Paris, France, for instance, or you're going to have to just turn those research sample traits off in order for you to test appropriately within your configuration. Ultimately, OnCue allows you to get very complex in the different configurations that you have. The majority of configurations can be easily tested by using testing equals 30. The big ones are IP blocking and geolocation, where you're really going to have to do things. Testing against your live site is the best way to ensure that everything is working correctly. If you don't have tags on your live site, you can use the OnCue bookmarklet, which can then allow you to test against the live site. So hopefully this tutorial on testing will be a start to get you going with testing within OnCue. And if you have any questions, please contact us at support@oncueresearch.com. Thank you.